It is not Wednesday, my dudes, which means it's time for another First Thoughts Initial Impressions Epic 7 video. This one will be on Ruiza, the hottest character, newest character that was just shown earlier this morning over on YouTube. As with all my First Thoughts and Initial Impressions videos, I'll give you my 2 cents on the character. How good do I think Ruiza is? How hot do I think Ruiza is? What types of gear and equipment sets would I play on her? All of those things you've come to expect from me in a First Thoughts and Initial Impressions video. Without any further ado, let's take a look now at Ruiza's S3 animation.
Have you prepared yourselves? I despise the arrogant ones. It's far too soon for you to be challenging me. Pathetically weak. Learn to use that thing above your shoulders, newcomer.
She's talking about our brain, but I'm going to have to respectfully decline. I've stopped using mine a long time ago. Anyways, in the English dub of Epic 7, Ruiza is voiced by Crystal Lee, who you may know as the voice of Jean Grey, aka the Phoenix in Marvel Rivals, as well as one of the coolest characters from Zenless Zone Zero, the head made at your service, Rena. Moving on to Ruiza's stats, she is a Fire Ranger of the Pisces zodiac symbol, which means she shares a stat line with Bihu, Biblis, Lua, Hellion Lua, and of course, Sea Phantom Politis. Taking a closer look at her stats, she has 993 attack, 611 defense, 6002 health, 120 base speed, 15% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, and no starting effectiveness or effect resistance. This translates to low base effectiveness and attack for a ranger, but it has well above average speed, and despite the fact that the 600-ish defense and 6,000 health doesn't seem like much, it's surprisingly one of the tankiest stat lines in the game for a ranger. Considering there isn't really a ranger that uses attack that's on this stat line, it's arguably the best one in the entire game. As for imprints, it's attack percentage for the back and top slots, and the self-imprint is effectiveness percentage. Considering Ruiza is not limited, you can kind of hold off on pulling for imprints. Anyways, you know the drill. Let's go over the character's kit one time so that way we're all on the same page. Starting with Ruiza's skill 2, Deflection. You gain 2 souls upon use, and it has a 4-turn cooldown. Creates a gust of wind, dispelling 2 buffs from all enemies, and decreasing combat readiness by 15 to 20% based on skill level before spreading the selected target's debuffs. Grants stealth to the caster for 2 turns. Spread. Applies the debuffs inflicted on the enemy target to all enemies except for the target. So essentially, you choose one of the 4 enemies on the opposing team, the other 3 get the chosen character's debuffs. That should make a bit more sense once you look at the skill 3, Demolition. You gain 3 souls upon use, and it has a 4 to 5 turn cooldown based on skill level. Attacks the enemy by destroying the surroundings, dispelling all buffs from the target, and decreasing their combat readiness by 50%, before a 75 to 100% chance based on skill level to inflict laceration and silence for 2 turns. Increases the combat readiness of Ruiza by 50%. At the start of the first battle, grants stealth for 2 turns. Laceration is a debuff that is unique to Ruiza, and despite its actual graphic here on the screen, it is dispellable. When attacked, increases damage suffered by 15%, and when health is reduced, inflicts injuries equivalent to the amount of health reduced. Applies to heroes only, meaning that it only works in PvP. Soulburn effect for the cost of 20 souls, ignores effect resistance. And finally, Ruiza's basic skill is Liquidation. Attacks the enemy with a whip and grants increased speed to Ruiza for 1 turn. Deals additional damage equivalent to 50% of injuries inflicted on the target. Now that you know the kit, let's talk about the character. First, let me say, holy shit, this character is so hot. Lately, Smilegate has been on a roll, producing these absolute baddies over the last couple of months, both between Chaos Zero Nightmare and Epic 7. Bless the art team, they truly do carry super creative. Seeing a character that looks this good, with an attitude this fierce, being relegated to a turn 1 character, it breaks my heart. If it wasn't obvious from the Ranger Pisces stat line and the effectiveness imprint from the get-go, Ruiza is absolutely designed to be a turn 1 control character in pretty much the exact same way we've already seen several times already. Lua, Hellion Lua, and even Sea Phantom Politis. These are characters that all share a stat line with Ruiza, and all function incredibly similarly. They take the turn, they strip the buffs, they put some kind of debuff on you that makes it hard for you to press buttons in a timely manner. And that last character we mentioned, Paulus, is one that we'll be focusing on in this analysis a little bit because Ruiza is kind of like a remixed version of that same character, only a bit more fair without like the resource reduction and perma stealth. Let's start with Demolition. Just like with C Phantom Paulus's passive Phantom Waltz, this skill starts Ruiza in stealth, which means you don't really have to worry about using Guiding Light as an artifact, which is something that's been plaguing a good chunk of Rangers in this game. From there, you get a single target full strip that pushes an enemy back by 50% CR before inflicting them with Laceration and Silence. Silence plus the CR pushback effectively ruins their ability to play the game, while Laceration sets them up for death. Recall that Laceration amplifies the damage that the target takes and also converts it into injury, effectively letting her dismantle tanks and bruisers with ease. Well, assuming that those tanks and bruisers aren't named Genesis Raz or just happen to be a big titty goth girl. Anyways, Soulburn Ignore Effect Resistance doesn't really feel super overtuned on this character either, like heroes we've seen in the past, because it's single target. Yes, it can still do bullshit things, which we'll get to in a second, but there's a window where the opponent can thread the needle, which I appreciate. It's not just instantly a death sentence like some of the designs that we've had in the past. Next, we come to Deflection. This is your AoE opener skill that removes buffs from all enemies and pushes back the enemy team, a la C Phantom Paladus. It also puts Ruiza back into stealth if she should happen to fall out of it. When using this AoE skill, whichever enemy you target, the debuffs on them will spread to the rest of the enemy team. This is such a simple but cool and powerful effect. It's crazy to think that something like this has never been used before on a character in Epic 7. This skill will allow you to get really creative and make some really back-breaking combos. Stun or sleep a target with your opener, then spread it to everyone else to lock down the entire enemy team. Maybe you have Seal on the enemy team at the start, but it's starting to wear off. Well, just target somebody that still has it and spread it back on the enemy team to keep it up for longer. The possibilities on this move make me really want to sit down and theory craft all sorts of weird team compositions for Ruiza, regardless of how strong they may or may not be. And I also really appreciate that Ruiza isn't simply just a get paid unit like so many other designs in the past. If you don't know what I mean by get paid, it is a phrase me and my card game teammates used to use back in the day to describe cards that just do everything all at once. You don't have to think about using the card in strategic spots. You just simply slam it down on the table and get all the effects up front immediately with no important decisions to be had. Previously in the past, I would lament about how characters like Conqueror Lilius were get paid units. You didn't think about if you had to use For Honor for the buffs and debuffs or cover for the shield and provoke. You simply just used For Honor and got cover for free. There were no interesting decisions to be had on turn 1 with Conqueror Lilius. You just got the whole kit right away, up front, no strings attached. Ruiza, on the other hand, has some very interesting decision making when it comes to her turn 1 plays. You can use Deflection at the start to strip the buffs and set your opponent back, but then you won't get full value on her spread mechanic. You will also have effectively lost a turn of stealth, meaning that there's going to be a single turn somewhere in your cooldown rotation where Ruiza is completely exposed and vulnerable. If you go for the Laceration play instead at the start to lock down a key target, you're not going to have an extra turn stapled to it, just a minor CR push, which means that your opponent's opener or counter picks can thread that needle between your first and second turns and disrupt your combo. You have to choose between going for the max value play, which is really easy to shut down, or the lower value play, which opens you up for getting destroyed later on in the game. It's actually a really smart design, and if it weren't for the fact that she's such a blatantly power-crept unit, I'd be singing her praises from the high heavens. Before moving on to her basic skill, I want to talk a little bit about her artifact, which is Gifted Pen. It increases the user's effectiveness by 10 to 20% based on artifact level. When attacking with a single target attack that isn't the user's basic attack skill, it inflicts decreased hit chance on the target for 2 turns and increases the combat radius of the back row unit by 15 to 30% based on artifact level, and it can only be activated once every 3 turns. Now, artifact choices for this character are fascinating to me. You have 2 incredibly similar artifact choices that are also completely different. Gifted Pen allows you to slot her into the back of your team and makes the window between demolition and deflection very small. This gives you the best chance to land her combo and run away with the game, but as I said before, it's very risky. On the flip side, we have Saria's artifact, Awaken Leaf, which gives a CR push to both Ruiza and the backslot ally if you go for deflection. This is the more consistent, but less explosive line of play. Both of these support a turn 1 aggressive playstyle, but each of them rewards you for pressing a different button at the start. Which one you go for, well, that's going to be player preference. And while they may not be as good, I still think that there's a slew of other interesting artifacts for you to consider on this character. Spatiotemporal Fan is great if you want to stealth another ally. Song of Stars is going to be really good if you want to land a target debuff on, say, Demolition, so that way you could spread it for a potential Architect Leica combo. Unseen Observer, well, that gives you souls for the team. Hell, even Bastion of Hope is on the table, much in the same way it was for a slower effect resistance-based version of Seafan and Politis. Personally, that last one is the way that I am going to try to play Ruiza, since there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to get her to those top speeds. This character's build potential in the artifact slot is honestly really refreshing. Rounding back now to her last skill, it's Liquidation. Speed buff on a skill 1 is already a really good thing, especially on a fast character, no doubt. But what really puts it over the edge, I feel like, is that additional damage proc. Dealing damage equal to 50% of someone's injuries on a basic attack is pretty crazy. For comparison, Death Dealer Raise is only 40%, and that already felt like it hit like a truck. Liquidation gives this character the ability to actually kill her targets, unlike some of the other similar control rangers. She also doesn't really have to be played with only control teams. She's fast enough and broadly usable enough to slot into your team early on in a draft without having to worry about being punished. And if you want to play her with control, well, she beautifully sets up for a late pick Death Dealer Ray to seal away the game. As for builds for Ruiza, it's as straightforward as it gets. Speed with hit set or speed with immunity set is going to be the go-to for you turn 1 players. But for the rest of us, the slow players, you're probably going to want to go speed resist. With Bastion of Hope and some good substats, hopefully you can remain stealth at the start and wait for your turn and then hopefully flip the tables on the enemy team. I could also see Speed Pursuit being worth a consideration with how hard Liquidation hits if you actually have good pursuit pieces already. Overall, Ruiza feels like a great addition to the Epic 7 PvP lineup. Beautiful, flexible, and certainly powerful enough to make a splash in the current state of the game, without feeling too oppressive thanks to some smart decision making by the design team. Just remember though, the character's not limited, so you can put her on your wish list as soon as her banner ends. And those are my thoughts on Ruiza, but now I want to hear from you. How do you feel about this character? Let me know down in the comments section below. And make sure you stay tuned later on today for my analysis of all of the announcements that came out of the developers notes earlier this morning. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later now.